If you're looking to up the brightness, color, and clarity of your Battlegrounds game, stay tuned. Hey guys, welcome back. Mike here with Things You Might Like. And I wanted to do an update video for my last one where I showed my reshade settings because I have found better settings and better filters, and I wanted to share more in depth what I was doing and how I was doing it and how it benefits my gameplay with you guys. Now, I want to get this caveat out of the way right off the bat. When we're talking about colors and clarity, there are so many different factors that are going to change what I'm seeing on my screen at home versus the video that you're watching and how it ends up on your screen. So I want you to understand that you need to take this as a reference because YouTube is going to compress it. When I record it, it's going to compress it. So you're going to lose little bits of detail here and there, but hopefully you understand the message that I'm trying to send, which is the actual filters that I'm using and how to mess around with them so you can get a similar type of look and tweak it to your liking, because ultimately that's what Reshade is about. It is about creating a subjective experience, something that you like, something that works for you. If you like that oversaturated garbage, I think it's garbage, but if you like it, go for it. It's about you and your gameplay. At the end of the video, I'm going to be showing examples with like the fog map and the dusk map and how these reshade settings can help there. But we are going to be covering a lot of content in this video. So I'm going to put the timestamps for the different sections in the video description below. So be sure to check that out if you want to jump to the different sections, like the different walkthrough sections, or if you want to go to the examples towards the end of the video. So if you're new here, consider liking the video and subscribing for more content like this. I like covering reshade. It's one of my favorite topics, and I have a lot of fun stuff coming up. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button below. And with that, let's jump right into it. So I apologize for the rather uninteresting intro, just having my character in this main menu screen, but it's a good way to just go over the menu and kind of get things going. And I'll show you some gameplay and how my settings look in the game a little bit later. So we're going to go ahead and start out by hitting Shift F2 to open up the panel. Now, one thing I wish they would do, I have everything downloaded, and every time I open Reshade, they are all opened up, and I hate that. I wish I could customize the layout, and if there's a way, let me know in the comments below, because I would love to make it so every time I open it up, the settings I use are at the top, so I'd love to drag and drop these guys around, and all of these are collapsed because I just hate it. I hate having to do this every single time. So let me fix that so I can clean it up a bit, and then we'll come right back. All right, so I've got it cleaned up to the 4 settings that I used, everything else closed, and then down here to edit those 4 settings. Now, the reason I have all of them open is because I wanted to check every single one of these filters and see how they affected the gameplay. So I need to go back and delete a few of them. I'm still testing a whole bunch, but they're really fun to play around with. If you haven't seen my Halloween video, it was a really fun experiment. I'll leave a link in the description below and in the top right corner of the screen now if you want to check that out after this video. But that was a really fun one, and I want to do more themed videos in the future. And I probably should have started off with this, but for those that are unacquainted with Reshade, real quick, it is just an in-game overlay where you can mess with a bunch of filters. Think of like a video game Instagram filter, for lack of a better comparison. So these are the settings that I am going to be using today. Let me go back to the regular. I will be using levels and curves for this brightness setting. And for the color, I will be just using vibrance. A lot of people use other color ones, like colorfulness is really popular. I like vibrance. I like what it does for me. It's nice and subtle without a huge performance hit. And then lastly, sharpen is going to be, or LumaSharpen will be my sharpening setting. I also recently did a video about using clarity, which is what I was using before for my sharp settings, but it was giving me a really big FPS hit, and frankly, LumaSharpen does everything I need. So clarity is now dead to me. You can ignore it. I don't use it anymore, and use LumaSharpen. So these 4 settings are what we're going to use to go from this to that. So let's start off by looking at the brightness settings that I used. Now I used 2 of them, curves and levels, and let's start with curves. Curves is what I use to change the contrast of the image, and it actually flattens the image a little bit, and I use this to bring up the blacks a little bit without having to brighten the entire image. So you can see when it's off, it's definitely a lot darker, and it's not too much darker in the brighter areas. But when I turn it on, it flattens out the image and brings up those darker areas. So curves is usually set at a 0, and then I found about a -0.5 is a good spot for me. but feel free to play around with this so you find what you like. And a good rule of thumb when messing with these settings is remember what the default is, because there's no way to automatically go back to it that I've found. So remember if it starts at 0 or 1 or whatever, and then go to the extremes to see what happens with that image, and then find the adjustment that you think works for you. So I leave mine at about -0.48 to a -0.5. Now the other setting I use is levels. And levels is interesting. You can actually get a negative effect. I have mine at about 0 and 200. So it starts off like this, and as I bring it down, it brightens up that image. But this will also wash out the sky a little bit if you go too far, so you can get really, really bright, obviously. So I put mine at about 200. I felt like that was a good middle ground. But just for an example of what you can do with this, take that all the way down, bring this all the way up, you start to get a negative image, which is kind of fun to mess around with, and maybe I'll do a video playing like this in the future. I think that could be cool. So let me bring it back up to 207. That to 0, and so that is my brightness setting. So between those two, starts off, this is standard, and that's with my brightness settings as shown. So vibrance is what I use. It tends to look saturated when you first turn it on, but after you play with it for a while, it feels fine, and then things look undersaturated when turning it off. So I'll just show you the settings I use. Feel free to play around with this one. This one is totally subjective. I encourage you to figure out what you like most. In this screen, it looks very blue, and that's just because of this screen. When I hop into the gameplay, you'll see that it doesn't look nearly as blue. Then vibrance is easy. You have the 3 settings right here, and you play around with them till you get what you like. And then the intensity. So I have it on 0.46. When people think of Reshade, they think of something like that. Just really not great. So let me go back down to my 0.46. And then I have these 3, 1.6, 1.4, and 0.4. And I'm continuing to always tweak these, so feel free to change it how you like. And lastly, the sharpness setting, LumaSharpen. This one also, change it to how you like. There's a little bit of an issue with my recording showing just how sharp it actually is. It looks pretty grainy in the recording, and I'm sure YouTube is probably going to botch that even further. So mess with it to your liking. Again, if I can reiterate that one more time, change it to what you like. I'm just showing you the foundation for you to take it off and run with it and do what you want with it. So LumaSharpen, this is a really soft game, and LumaSharpen just gives it that tiny bit of edge. I hope in the future when this launches, they're going to add a sharpness setting that does the trick. But in the meantime, LumaSharpen, these are my settings right here. I encourage you to mess around with them. You can get really sharp. I'm at a 0.2 or a 2 right now, 1.985. Go all the way up to 3, it gets real sharp. You can make it, real soft. So let me go to that 2 again. And that's just where I like it. Now, why would you do this? When the game is a little sharper, it does look a little bit better, and some people debate whether or not it's easier to spot people. I think it's a little bit easier to spot people, but that's not really why I'm doing it. It just helps the game feel a little bit better as I go through and play it. So these are my settings right here, and you're welcome to take a look at that. And I will put all of these in the video description below if you want to just have a reference to look at everything, so you don't have to browse through the video to see all my different settings. And that's it. Sorry that we had to take the long way around to get through all those settings, but hopefully it kind of gets you going and you can take those and run with it. So let's go ahead and jump into the game. I'll find a couple different popular locations, and you can see the contrast between these settings and before and how they look in game. All right, just to kick things off, Spawn Island, this is the normal one. I don't have any settings on whatsoever, and I never noticed how bad it looked until I turned on Reshade, and even then it was nice to have it on. But it wasn't until I played with this for a little bit and then turned off Reshade that I was like, oh, it just does not look good. Even this person running towards me right now, just fuzzy and just muted colors, and so I just like this better. Stock, Reshade, stock, Reshade, stock, Reshade. So up on the radar tower, I have everything set to very low except for anti-aliasing. And so watch as I turn on the colors. So it's not just the greens being pretty saturated, and they're going to look even more saturated because they're so prominent in this image, but the blue looks a lot better. Sharpness looks better, and my favorite part is the brightness setting, just how it brings everything up a little bit. And one thing that I had mentioned before, it wasn't until I played with Reshade for a little bit and then turned it off, that's when I really got a distaste for just how bad the game looks. So we walked around for a little bit now. When I turn it off, I mean, how does that look to you now? It looks like I've made the settings worse. Like I went from stock and then put on some filter to make it look drab. But that's not it. This is the actual game settings, and these are my Reshade. So Dusk games are a little bit different, I think. Now you can change the colors if you want and have a different color setup, because maybe it makes things a little bit orange to you. I really don't care that much for me to go and have a whole second profile for this. But just look at everyone. They look pretty clear. But when I shut things off, it looks just really dark and muddy. So I really think this color profile and the brightness especially helps a lot in the dusk setting and the dusk maps. So I thought the swamp might be a great place to showcase the Reshade settings, especially on a dusk map like this, because everything just feels very dark and just very fuzzy. So this is without my Reshade settings, and this is with my Reshade settings. The colors are definitely off, I'll give you that, and however it ends up looking on your screen, probably even more off. But in this case, I just want to be able to see things a little bit better and brighten things up, and my settings definitely do the job. If you want to go all out, like I said before, and have an entire different preset for specifically these kinds of maps or even fog maps, then that might not be a bad idea. But in this case, I think this shows that the brightness really does help with this map and in these kinds of areas. So now let's take a look at the fog map. Now I think their current implementation of the fog map is really terrible. I think the fog is too dense, and this gives you just a little bit more visibility by defining the edges. You can see those guys fighting in the background just become a little bit clearer. It's not like it gives you x-ray vision or anything crazy like that, but it does help you distinguish between maybe a guy and a bush, which in the fog maps, I will take all the help I can get, because like I said, it's just really not a great implementation in its current form. And just so you're aware, all of the kill footage I've used for this video actually had my Reshade settings turned on, so you can use that as a reference to what it looks like in-game as well. So if this helped you out, be sure to drop a like and consider subscribing to the channel for more content just like this. This is Mike with Things You Might Like, and I will see you guys with my next cool thing.